Hello friends, we have been having an extended discussion on the second law of thermodynamics, and we have been looking into different ways to express the second law of thermodynamics. Now if you could recollect the second law of thermodynamics, we began with the consideration of an heat engine, and we related certain theoretical derivation to that of the physical world, and then we found that the consistency is lost when we relate certain derivation to that of the physical world, and based on that we postulated the second law of thermodynamics. However, while considering this particular operation of the heat engine, we were able to realize that a dynamic process, the operation of the heat engine, which is a dynamic process, can be categorized into reversible and the irreversible process, and we introduced or we considered a variable to discuss this irreversible change. And based on this variable, which we refer to as entropy, we were able to postulate a different forms of the second law of thermodynamics. And since estimating the entropy of a physical system is not that straightforward, we introduced several other combinations of variables to arrive at several other thermodynamic parameters, using which we will be able to state the dynamic nature of the system. So we began with the operation of the heat engine. We postulated the second law of thermodynamics based on it, and then we moved into considering the irreversible change largely, and we introduced an appropriate thermodynamic variable called entropy. The second law of thermodynamics was based or postulated based on it. And after that, we moved away from the entropy alone. We considered combination of different variables, and we discussed or described the irreversible process through these variables. So what we essentially now have is we have entropy, which is expressed by this term S, and the change in the entropy, the overall change in the entropy delta S. We have overall change in the combination of entropy and other variables, which we refer to as the Helmholtz free energy, and the combination of entropy and other variables, which we refer to as the Gibbs free energy. So if you could recollect, the Helmholtz free energy assumes that the volume is constant, while the Gibbs free energy, it relaxes this assumption. And if you could recollect, the expression for the change in the Helmholtz free energy can be expressed as the combination of change in the internal energy to that of the change in the entropy. And if you consider the change in the Gibbs free energy, when you relax the constant volume assumption that is offered or that is assumed for the Helmholtz free energy case, we end up expressing the change in the Gibbs free energy as with to that of the change in the enthalpy and the similar change in the entropy. Now these are the expressions that we are familiar with, and we could see there are certain similarities. That is, we see that in both these expressions there is the change in the entropy. And if you define work, or if you define one of the thermodynamic variable that we employ here, that is the change in the internal energy for a non-constant volume condition, for a varying volume condition, you have the heat exchange minus that of the work done, and the heat exchange. Now the change in the entropy, which is nothing but the degree of irreversibility, assumes a form which is expressed in this way, and from this the heat exchange can be expressed as T delta S, and the conventional expression for the work done is P dV. And here we also observe that the TD as the change in the entropy continues, and according to the conventional description of the work done, we have change in the volume. So whatever functions we have considered, they have a specific form. So very rarely we come across a non-isothermal change wherein the expression is includes a term something like this, S dot dt. So very rarely so far we have come across such a term, and similarly we have not often come across this term wherein the volume is constant but the pressure changes. However, in the physical world we have all sort of changes that is occurring to a system. So one purpose of considering or studying thermodynamics or spending some time in these different relations is that you should be in a position to describe any change in the state of the system. We should not be restricted by a specific change alone. We should not say that, okay, we will not be able to express or relate the change in the Gibbs free energy to that of a non-isothermal system. So we should not be able to state that we are not able to relate these two here, or we are not able to relate any of these thermodynamic functions or variables to that of the non-isothermal change in the state of the system. And the same goes for the change in the pressure. So we should not be in a position to say we are not able to describe the thermodynamic, or thermodynamically we are not able to describe the change in the state because there is a change in the pressure that is associated with the system. So therefore we are considering, or we are attempting to have similar expression wherein this non-canonical form of changes, or these changes like the non-isothermal and the change in the pressure are also included. So that is one of the way of expanding our focus, or our study on the different thermodynamic parameters. Now in the previous lecture, if you could recollect, we began with the consideration of the enthalpy. So the enthalpy can be expressed as the combination of the internal energy and the work done. So du plus P dV. So this is how one would express the enthalpy. Now this enthalpy, this description of enthalpy assumes that the volume of the system changes while the pressure is constant. Supposing if we have a change in the state of the system wherein there is also change in the pressure, then it means this expression will be extended to P naught dP. So initially for arriving at an expression for discussing or for describing the enthalpy, we assumed that the pressure is constant and the volume is changing. Now we are extending it. Now this change in the enthalpy is not only governed by U and V, internal energy and volume. Now it is also governed by P, meaning we are considering a change in the state of the system where not only the internal energy is changing, but volume is changing and also pressure is changing. Now we want to rather treat this expression in such a way that we are able to simplify this overall treatment. Now what we have is, we have a change in the internal energy, a change in the volume when the pressure is constant. So here this expression has the similar terms associated with it. We have change in the internal energy and the pressure is constant and the volume is changes. So when you bring this term here, what you would end up having is combination of these two terms is nothing but T ds. So therefore the enthalpy change when this change in the state of the system is associated with a change in the pressure, not just change in the volume. When the change in the state of the system is associated with change in the pressure, then can be expressed as TdS plus VTP. So what we now have is, we have broken away from the conventional change in the state of the system. So conventional variable, we have broken away from the conventional variables, and now we have arrived at an expression that includes the non-conventional variables, the non-conventional variables, or the change in the non-conventional variables. So this is, we have, in this case we have introduced change in the pressure, which so far has been assumed to be constant. Now we can extend the similar treatment to other parameters that we have considered here. So here what we essentially have expressed is, we have now an expression for the change in the enthalpy for a system where there is not only the change in the internal energy and volume, but also change in the pressure. So we have considered the change in the three different variables in a system, and for the corresponding system we are now in a position to express the enthalpy of that change in the state of the system. Now let us treat this in a similar way. Let us treat the behavior of the internal, or the Helmholtz free energy. Now when you consider the Helmholtz free energy, so now that we have arrived at this expression, maybe it is best for us to rather focus on the change in the Helmholtz free energy. Now if you consider the treatment of the Helmholtz free energy, it has, when you consider the different variables that are involved in the Helmholtz free energy, it is the internal energy and the entropy. So that is the reason we have the change in the Helmholtz free energy as du minus TdS. Now what this does not include is change in the temperature. So temperature here is assumed to be constant. Now when we include the change in the temperature, so when you assume the change in the temperature, what this expression is meant for is, it is isothermal system. So already for arriving at the description of the Helmholtz free energy, we assume the volume is to be constant. And even after arriving at this canonical description, this generalized description of the Helmholtz free energy assumes that the change in the state of the system is isothermal, the temperature is constant. Now, when we want to relax it, then since all the internal energy, entropy and the temperature is they are the state variable, so we can express the Helmholtz free energy for a change in the Helmholtz free energy for the change in the state of the system, which is non-isothermal in this manner: TdS minus SdT. So in this way we are able to express what we have just done is, instead of considering so here what we have is, we have the combination of T and S, that is combination of temperature and entropy. Now when for an isothermal system, so a change in this, or a change in the entropy and change in the temperature can be expressed as, by considering the change in the temperature with respect to, say, in the say for example the change in the Helmholtz free energy with respect to the temperature when the entropy is constant, and change in the Helmholtz free energy when the entropy changes when the temperature is constant. So this is generally how we would expand the change in the Helmholtz free energy when both entropy and temperature changes. So what we do is, we assume one of these two variables to be constant and allow the other variable to change in response to the change in the, or with relation to that of the Helmholtz free energy. So that is what happens when we have not just one of the variable but both these variables changing. For an isothermal case, since dt is equal to 0, this term gets cancelled out and all that you are left with is a term that is associated with the ds. For an isothermal case, since dt is 0, this term gets cancelled out and all you are associated with is a term that comprises of just change in the entropy alone. But now we want to extend our approximation, our restriction of the isothermal changes, so we want to include this dt as well, so this dt as well. So therefore we have considered the summation of this dt as well. So therefore, if you want to more precisely write this expression, so if a more precise way of writing this expression is that, in the present case, after relaxing the isothermal condition, this expression assumes the form T ds plus S dt. So we are considering both change in the entropy and also change in the temperature. So now we have an expression that includes internal energy, change in the entropy and the change in the temperature. Now when you relate, it is possible for us rather to relate this expression here, that is the change in the rather we saw that this change in the entropy and the change in the internal energy of the system, we were able to relate to that of the enthalpy just moments before. So the change in the enthalpy when you have a change in the entropy and the change in the internal energy, wherein you have, instead of just the volume change, we also had a pressure change, and this expression is of the form T ds plus V dP. So we were able to arrive at this expression just moments before. So what we essentially have is, we have an expression of this form wherein we have T dH is nothing but we have the combination of these two terms here, wherein we are able to include these two terms here. Now we have the change in the internal energy, change in the entropy and also change in the temperature of the system, meaning we have a non-isothermal process. And if you consider this particular terms alone, that is du minus Tds, these terms can be combined, or these terms are present in this expression of the internal energy. So this expression of the internal energy, which helped us arrive at this change in the enthalpy for a change in the system wherein the pressure also changes, can also be used to express the change in the Helmholtz free energy for a non-isothermal transformation. Now how that can be used is, we have T ds here and we have du. the same, both of these terms are found in this expression here. We have du, du, TdS, TdS. So now when we consider or when we try to remove these two terms, it can be done using this expression here, and therefore this expression, by substituting this expression 1 in this expression, by substituting the expression 1 here, what we would end up having is, so we have du, and this combination of du, that is change in the internal energy, minus that of TdS will be equal to minus PdV. So therefore the Helmholtz free energy, change in the Helmholtz free energy for a non-isothermal transformation wherein you have a interchange in the internal energy, change in the entropy and change in temperature, can be expressed as, so you combine these two, this will substitute this equation 1 in this relation here, and you end up having minus PdV minus S dt. So what you are essentially doing is, you are essentially expressing the change in the Helmholtz free energy not in terms of the internal energy, entropy and temperature. Of course this is a non-isothermal change, so therefore we retain the temperature, however we replace this by volume. So we are replacing the two other variables by volume. So we are progressively relaxing all the assumptions we have made. So we have considered the Helmholtz free energy for a constant volume, change in the state of the system, and even though we assumed just the constant volume, our description ultimately, our canonical description ultimately assumes the isothermal change in the state of the system. So when we relax that, we arrive at a new set of expression where we have internal energy, entropy and temperature. So we have now in a position to express the change in the state of the system where the temperature also changes, and now when we relate this expression to the canonical expression, or rather the first law of thermodynamics expressed based on the change in the entropy, then we are able to arrive at this expression here. Now if you look closely at this expression, what we have is, we have Helmholtz free energy. So let me write it in a different color. So we have Helmholtz free energy that is dependent on volume and temperature. So meaning we have also relaxed the original description of original assumption that was made in order to arrive at the description of the Helmholtz free energy. If you could recollect, the original assumption that was made to arrive at the expression for the Helmholtz free energy is that the volume is to be constant. Now we have arrived at an expression wherein the change in the Helmholtz free energy is related to that of the change in the volume. So we have also, by including or by considering a non-isothermal change in the state of the system, we have also been able to relax the original assumption of constant volume. Now the Helmholtz free energy can be used to express the change in the state of the system when it is non-isothermal, when it is non-isothermal, also when the volume of the system changes. So this is one interesting aspect, or this is one key aspect, or rather one could say this is one of the critical or the pivotal reason for us studying the thermodynamics, or particularly considering these different relations in the thermodynamic variables more closely, because this will enable us to describe the change in the state of the system using the variables that are possible for us to measure. We cannot say, okay, we have a change in the state of the system and these are the variables we can measure, and because these variables, these are the only variables we can measure, we are not able to discuss thermodynamically the change in the state of the system. So that is rather a limitation. So in order to get rid of that limitation, in order to describe any change in the state of the system, provided we are able to measure few of these thermodynamic variables, we should be able to discuss thermodynamically that change in the state. So these relations help us do that. So even though, so this is a wonderful example, even though we began with the description of the Helmholtz free energy assuming the volume is constant, and by relaxing or by considering a non-isothermal change in the state of the system and trying to express the Helmholtz free energy change in a non-isothermal change of the system, we have now arrived at an expression for the Helmholtz free energy wherein it is possible for us to express the change on the state of the system wherein the volume also changes. Now let us go back to that to the description of the Gibbs free energy, where already the change in the volume of the system is rather relaxed. So the Gibbs free energy assumes the form dH minus dS. Now again, let us try to express again in this canonical expression for the Gibbs free energy. What we have is, we have the temperature is assumed to be constant. So again, this is an expression for an isothermal change in the state of the system. Now when you consider a non-isothermal change, what we end up having is TdS is minus SdT. So this is the expression that we end up having when we consider a non-isothermal change in the state of the system, where we are able to express the change in the state based on the change in the Gibbs free energy. So it is possible for us in some instance express the change in the state of the system using the Helmholtz free energy, some system using Gibbs free energy. Now we have extended the canonical description, which was originally for the isothermal case, to a non-isothermal case. Now we need an expression where this still holds, but we can rather attempt to simplify these two terms. We need to have an expression where these two terms can be simplified, whereas this term needs to hold. So we have the change in the enthalpy and change in the entropy. So if we go back here, what we have here, we have this expression which we derived a few minutes before, or at the initial stage of this lecture, where we have change in the enthalpy, change in the entropy of the system. Now when you bring this back here, the combination of enthalpy and the change in the entropy is nothing but V dP, that is the volume and the change in the pressure. So what we essentially have is dH minus TdS, which we see here is nothing but V dP. Now we can substitute this here, and ultimately what you end up having is dG as V dP minus SdT. So now it is possible for us to describe the change in the state of the system, wherein, so initially the original canonical description of the Gibbs free energy allows us to describe the change in the state of the system wherein the volume changes. Now because of our extension, we are not only able to describe the change in the state of the system wherein the volume changes, but wherein the pressure also changes, wherein the temperature also changes. So what we have done is, we have just considered progressively relaxing all the variables that we assume to be constant. By doing so, we have now extended the applicability of each of these thermodynamic parameters. So we consider, so this Helmholtz and Gibbs free energy are the prime example. For the Helmholtz free energy, we relaxed one variable. We wanted to treat the change in the Helmholtz free energy for a non-isothermal system that allowed us now to express the change in the state of the system wherein the volume is not preserved. Now in the same way, we wanted to have the Gibbs free energy for a non-isothermal change in the Gibbs free energy for a non-isothermal change of the state of the system. Now that expression now resulted in that treatment resulted in an expression that now allows us to rather describe the change in the state of the system wherein the pressure along with the temperature changes. Now let us try to rather gather all these different expressions, or rather all these different variables and their governing terms. For instance, here we have the Gibbs free energy, which is governed by pressure and temperature. We have here in this term the enthalpy, that is governed by pressure and entropy, and in the previous page we have our Helmholtz free energy here, which is governed by volume, and Helmholtz free energy, which is governed by volume and temperature. And finally, in this case here, we have our internal energy, so which is governed by the entropy and volume. So we have certain macroscopic variables that we introduced. So if again tying it all to the basics of thermodynamics, we want to discuss the state of the system. We want to discuss the change in the state of the system. not based on rather the behavior or the microscopic state of the system, but introducing or considering the whole system macroscopically. And for that, we introduced separate variables, and these variables are, so these are the variables that we introduced. That is internal energy. It is something that we introduced to discuss the change in the state of the system. One change to one state, or rather the internal energy is the variable that we introduced to discuss the state of the system, how one state is different from the another state. And when we want to express the change in the state of the system wherein the volume is changing, we introduced enthalpy. So for discussing just the state of the system, we introduced internal energy, and when the state involved change in the volume, we moved to enthalpy. Now when we want to discuss change in the state of the system for a constant volume change, then we introduced Helmholtz free energy. And when we want to discuss or describe the change in the state of the system wherein the volume also changes, we introduced Gibbs free energy. So all these we introduced by treating the system in a macroscopic manner, and all these are dependent on certain variables that is measurable for us. So these are dependent on certain variables which we can measure. Now what then we can, or what such dependence allows us to do is, it allows us to distinguish thermodynamic functions from the thermodynamic variables. So these thermodynamic functions are the ones that are dependent on the thermodynamic variables, and these are the ones that we have introduced in order to describe either the state of the system or change in the state of the system. And all these we introduced because we are treating the system macroscopically. We are not considering the microscopic state of the system. So the reason for considering all these different combination of these terms is that now we are in a position to describe any change in the state of a system. So if we have a system and it is in a specific state, we are able to describe the state of the system and the change in the state of the system using the thermodynamic functions. And depending on what variables we are able to measure, so depending on what are the variables we are able to measure, we are in a position to choose appropriate thermodynamic function to discuss the change in the state and the state of the system. If it is possible for us to measure, say, pressure and entropy, then the change in the state of the system can be described by considering the change in enthalpy. On the other hand, if we are able to measure the change in the state of the system by measuring the temperature and volume, which is rather straightforward, we can do that, or we can now express the change in the state of the system through Helmholtz free energy. On the other hand, if we are able to measure the change in the temperature and the pressure of the system, now that change in the state of the system can be expressed by considering the Gibbs free energy. So the reason you might find this rather too theoretical, but there is a critical reason for us spending some amount of time in this theoretical part. This is because now we have arrived at a combination of thermodynamic functions and variables that allows us to describe change in any state of the system. So any form of other change, now we are able to describe using these thermodynamic variables by measuring the change in the variables that are accessible to us. For instance, if you consider pressure and temperature, if you consider volume and temperature, these are variables that are they are accessible to us, and it is possible for us to measure the change in the pressure. It is possible for us to measure the change in the volume. It is also possible for us to measure the change in the pressure and change in the temperature. So once you see a change in the state of the system and you reduce that, this change is because of these two independent variables, and depending on these two nature of these two independent variables, we can now describe the change in the state of the system using any one of these thermodynamic functions. This is the critical role. So this is, even though there are two phases to our approach, or two advantages of considering each of these relations extensively. One is we are able to relax the assumptions that enabled us to arrive at the canonical form, arrive at the rather the usual form of this expression. We were able to arrive at through certain expressions or certain assumption. By relaxing the assumption, we are extending the description of, or we are extending the applicability of each of the thermodynamic function. That is one advantage. And the other advantage is now we have set of relations that are based on accessible variables. So when you see a change in the state of the system, and when you are able to measure the certain variables the change, or measuring certain change in the certain variables are accessible to us, then using that variables we will be able to thermodynamically describe the change in the state of the system. Now supposing you see a system and it is experiencing a change, and during the change the temperature changes and the pressure is also increasing. Now for such a change in the state of the system, when we want to express this change in a thermodynamically consistent manner, then we can do so by considering the change in the Gibbs free energy. Now in the case of pressure, when we have volume, you can do so by using Helmholtz free energy, and that is one of the reasons why the Gibbs and Helmholtz free energy are rather widely used, because temperature, volume and pressure, these are variables that are quite accessible to us. In the physical world, these can be measured rather in a straightforward way, and in order to arrive at this expression wherein the Gibbs free energy is dependent on pressure and temperature, Helmholtz free energy on volume and temperature, we need to begin with their canonical description and then relax their assumption. So that is the reason why we spent quite some time on understanding or arriving at these relations here. So ultimately, these relation, by virtue of this relation, by exploiting these relation, we will be able to relate any change in the state of the system, or we will be able to describe any change in the state of the system thermodynamically, provided you have a good understanding of it. Now, even though we have considered different variables, both accessible, some rather quite not that accessible. For instance, if you just consider the thermodynamic variables in this equations alone, so we have 4 thermodynamic functions, and if you consider the governing thermodynamic variables, these are pressure, temperature, volume and entropy. So pressure, temperature, volume, it is easy for us to grasp. We can measure it rather in a easier manner when compared to that of the entropy. So far, all the different thermodynamic functions we have considered, so different thermodynamic, there is the 4 thermodynamic functions we have considered, they are rather expressed based on the combination of these variables. So let me move to a different page. So what we essentially have is we have internal energy, enthalpy, Helmholtz free energy and Gibbs free energy, and all these are rather dependent on some combination of temperature, pressure, volume and entropy. Now in all these description, there is one assumption that is underlying. So one of the red line that is we have been following all through this lecture is that we are attempting to relax all the assumptions so that we are able to describe each of these functions in a generalized manner. So that is one of our goal. And even though for each of these expressions we say that okay, for Helmholtz free energy we assume the volume is to be constant, and this is relaxed in Gibbs free energy. Even though we say that, even though we just state as if the volume is alone is constant, there is one other assumption that is made for each of these thermodynamic variables or functions rather implicitly, and that is for arriving at each of these functions we assume that the system is closed. So we assume that for each of these functions, thermodynamic functions, when we want to describe these thermodynamic functions, when we want to arrive at a description for this thermodynamic function, we assume that the system is closed. Now let us try to, or let us attempt to rather relax that assumption. So let us consider an open system wherein in addition to all these variables, there is also the possibility of some additional material or some additional atoms or some additional mass getting into the system. So there is a possibility of some mass, say n, and refer to the number of moles of a given mass that is able to enter into the system or leave from the system. So let us consider that. Now in that case, if you assume this open system, what essentially we are doing is, so let us begin with say Gibbs free energy. So Gibbs free energy is dependent on pressure and temperature. So this relation we got from here. So by relaxing the non-isothermal case, we arrived at an expression, and in that expression the Gibbs free energy is dependent on the Gibbs free energy, a thermodynamic function, is dependent on pressure and temperature, two thermodynamic variables. Now in addition to that, so this is for a closed system. Now when you consider an open system, this Gibbs free energy now is governed by three variables, that is pressure, temperature and the mass of the material, or the more often, since we are talking in terms of the exchange of materials, a more a technical way of introducing a material or describing the mass exchange is the number of moles. And if you want to get rid of units, it is also possible, so it's referred to as mole fractions. So what a number of moles is, or how many atoms a mole includes, this you might have already known, and maybe some simple Google search, if you have forgotten, maybe a simple Google search could help you. And similarly the mole fraction, in case of mole fraction, it is nothing but the ratio of I don't know. For this again, the mole fraction can be used when you have more than two different masses are entering. So that being the case, we will just restrict ourselves to number of moles alone. So what we essentially have is, we have a certain mass that is either getting into the system or getting away from the system, but so a technical way of expressing it will be moles. Now when you have two different types of atoms, or when you have more than one type of atom getting into or away from the system or out of the system, then you could use mole fraction, number of moles, moles as a unit, mole fraction, it is unitless. So what we have now extended is, or not now, we are expressing the thermodynamic function of the Gibbs free energy in terms of three variables: pressure, temperature and number of moles of the material, or number of moles of a given material that is exchange, that is being transferred into or away from the system. Now these here are rather, they are not a path variables, but they are the state variables. The pressure, temperature and the mass transfer these are rather the state variables. Now it is rather critical for us in this instance to distinguish one other, or to introduce one other distinction as well. The thing is, if you consider the Gibbs free energy here, in addition to being dependent on the pressure and temperature, it is also depends on the number of particles that is present in a system. So if you have say n1 particle, the Gibbs free energy will be G1, and in case of n2, the Gibbs free energy will be G2. So it depends on the number of particles. Now if the number of particles, often it is the number of particles that governs the size of the system. So ultimately what we have is, the Gibbs free energy depends on the size of the system. It depends on the number of particles that are in the system. So therefore these are referred to as the extensive variables or functions. Extensive functions or variables. So when you have a thermodynamic function which is dependent on the number of particles in the system, so when you change the number of particles in the system, this particular thermodynamic variable changes, then that variable or function we refer to it as the extensive function. So we have made initially state and path variables. Now we have made the distinction between the extensive and intensive variable. So intensive variable is the one wherein it does not depend on the number of particles in the system. However, in case of extensive variable or extensive function, as in case of Gibbs free energy, when you consider the open system, it depends on number of particles in the system. So therefore it is an extensive function. When you consider a variable, it is an extensive variable. So now, given that these three variables are the state variables, the change in the Gibbs free energy when an open system experiences its changes can be expressed in this manner. Again, this is primarily because we have Gibbs free energy dependent on the state variables alone. So change in the Gibbs free energy with respect to that of the change in pressure when temperature and the number of particles in the system is constant. So let me use rather a different color to make it distinct. So the change in the Gibbs free energy with respect to change in pressure when the temperature and the number of particles are constant. And similarly to that, we need to add the change in the Gibbs free energy with respect to change in temperature when the pressure and the number of particles are constant. And finally, the change in the Gibbs free energy when the change in the number of particles with respect to the change in the number of particles when the temperature and pressures is constant. So when both these are constant. So this is the way we would express rather the change in the Gibbs free energy of a system, the change in the state of a system which is not closed but open. So we have a change in the state of an open system, which is rather we are able to measure the pressure and temperature of it. So this change in the state is rather it manifests itself, or it is characterized by change in the pressure and temperature. So we have an open system that experiences a change, and this change manifests itself, it is observable through the change in the pressure and temperature. In such a case, we adapt Gibbs free energy, and the change in the Gibbs free energy can be expressed in this form here. Now, if you could recollect our initial discussions, our discussion in the module 1, where once we are able to describe the change in the state of a system based on their state variables, we were able to replace each of these variables with a material constant. We were able to replace each of these variables with a constant. Now, even here we can do that by relating this expression to the expression here. But nevertheless, when we consider this expression here, it is possible for us to replace these partial derivatives to one of these constants. Now, in that, if the same spirit, if we carry over the same spirit that we employ for these two terms here to that of the third term, the newly introduced term, the term that says what we are considering is an open system, when we rather extend the same spirit that we have that we treat these two terms with, that is, the partial derivatives can be replaced by a material constant, which when we expand the same spirit to this term here. So this change in the internal energy with respect to the mass exchange can be treated as a specific variable which is referred to as the chemical potential. So what we have is, we have a change in a thermodynamic function that is exclusively based on. So here, for this expression, we assume that the temperature and pressure is constant. So when you assume a change in the state of the system for which the temperature and pressure is constant, and the change is primarily because of the mass exchange, so that means the Gibbs free energy here, it changes with respect to the mass exchange. This change in the Gibbs free energy with respect to that of the mass is what we refer to as the chemical potential. Now, the reason we have this term, or that is referred to as the chemical potential, because often this particular exchange is observed in a chemical system. So what we term as chemical system is that the mass exchange, so whatever mass that occurs is usually in terms of the atoms, and atoms meaning, so here we have considered a simplistic mass exchange. A simplistic mass exchange meaning we are considering the exchange of, again we are considering moles here, so we are considering a flow of an individual element here, we are considering an homogeneous simple system, and we are considering a flow of an the same homogeneous system, a flow in or a flow out of an homogeneous system. When you consider a simple uniform homogeneous system, in the nature the simple homogeneous system is an element, and this all pertains to the realm of chemicals, so therefore we refer to it as chemical, and we introduce the term, or we have this term chemical here, and the reason we have this term potential here is because with reference to this exchange of these mass, we are considering the change in the thermodynamic function. The same goes for the gravitational potential, the same goes for electric potential. If you consider the description of the gravitational potential and the electric potential, what they essentially do is they essentially normalize a given gravitational energy, a given electrical energy. So they tend to, when you use the term potential, what they tend to do is they tend to normalize it. So the potential term is used to in physics, in general physics, in case of generally when we use the term potential, what you are essentially doing is you are rather normalizing a given energy form. You are reducing or you are ensuring that this particular energy form is not dependent on a specific variable. So that is what we have done while describing the chemical potential. Now the Gibbs free energy, which was originally extensive, now it just depends on temperature and pressure. So the Gibbs free energy, which was originally extensive, when we take the ratio, when we consider the partial derivative of this extensive variable with respect to that of the mass exchange, we end up with chemical potential, and this chemical potential is no longer extensive, it is intensive in nature. So what we have achieved is, we are considering the change in the state of the open system, and in that open system we have arrived at a variable, not a function, we have arrived at a variable that governs the change in the Gibbs free energy, that governs or that dictates the change in the thermodynamic function when the mass exchange, or in relation to that of the mass exchange, and that we refer to as chemical potential. Chemical because the mass usually is treated in terms of as individual elements, as individual atoms, and potential because now what we arrive at is an intensive variable. So we have translated the extensive Gibbs free energy to an intensive variable, and that is to this partial derivative here. And in almost all of the different potential that we come across while studying physics, largely the potential often is an intensive variable, and it is made intensive by taking appropriate ratios of the extensive function to that of the feature that makes it extensive. So here the Gibbs free energy originally was made extensive by the mass transfer by taking the partial derivative of the Gibbs free energy. With respect to the variable that made it extensive, we arrive at chemical potential, which is now intensive, and it is not dependent on the mass transfer directly. So with this, we will wind this lecture up. We have arrived at one critical thermodynamic function that will stay with us all through this course. So this is where we have been gradually narrowing down or getting focused on translating the generalized thermodynamic theory to that of the metallurgical and materials engineering. And this is a key point wherein we have explicitly introduced the chemical term here. We have explicitly considered the mass exchange here, which is quite critical for any metallurgical or material science phenomena. So with this, we will wind this lecture up, and we will begin the next lecture from this very point. Goodbye.